Hello, welcome to On Air. I'm Olivia Mead. I'm founder and CEO of the nonprofit organization Yoga for First Offenders. Just kidding, for first responders. And with me is the president of Yoga for First Responders, Eric Brenneman. He is not a first offender nor a second offender. We both have clean records.
No,
That's because we weren't caught in that one illegal thing we did. Do you remember?
I
Do you
do.
not
I mean,
remember? Okay, you
you
do.
could have been you could have been arrested. Like we supposedly we bartered for something. Are you?
Well, this is
But
what I
so
learned.
we don't go to jail. We will not share what happened.
Okay, that sounds good. We will not share what happened. But I did Google if what we did would be a misdemeanor or a felony.
And I think it would have been a
It
misdemeanor.
was it was nothing. And like now everyone's probably thinking we did something really bad. It was so little and we're such good citizens that we went to the grocery store and we were like quiet. We didn't talk. And then the next thing I know, Eric's calling his dad. he's like, he's
I guess
like,
that's happened.
this is what's happened, and nothing. And it was nothing, but we were just like really super good citizens. Anyway, so
Good.
yes, okay. So this is part two of our conversation with Jason Downey, and if you go back to listen to part one if you haven't already. And if you do want to just join for part two, that's fine. We do a little bit of recapping, but I think he's really worth listening to. Like he's walking the walk. So definitely listen to both parts when you can. So I decided to show up and on the episode.
Crashed the broadcast.
I crashed the broadcast. I brought in my lady bossness spice. I asked questions that had already been asked, just coming in like a wrecking ball. Um, but he is just a doll, and we all get very vulnerable here. And what I love about that is, oh, guys, anyone who's listening to this, you're human, we're human. No one is getting out of here alive. And I feel like we bring up Brene Brown. So if that gives you any indication, we're riddled as a society by shame. As
Yeah.
if and the reason we are is because there are people out there, just look on social media, who are judgy little bitches. Sorry, but they are just writing this shitty comments to each other. And so of course it makes people want to, you know, go back into their shells. So I'm not saying there's no explanation for why people feel too afraid to be vulnerable, but I think when we actually just speak the truth instead of trying to skirt around the issue, then everyone's going to feel a little bit safer to do so as well. So
Yeah, and
that
that's
was my takeaway.
yeah, and I mean that leads to actually real authentic conversations, which is why everybody we've had on our show, we could text tomorrow as a friend. I say that at the end of this episode because
Yeah.
this ends up being a 2 hour episode 1 and episode 2, a 2 hour deep conversation where we share very vulnerable stories personally and professionally.
Yeah.
Like that's where the connections are made. And it's something that we as a society need to do better, especially in public safety. And so these are important episodes. These are important conversations. And so I really encourage you to stick through until the end of this episode, because once again, the breakthroughs happen in the end. So come on
We
this
also
journey with us.
we also talk about scones. So if you're not here for the vulnerability, grab a cup of coffee and just wait for the scone content. But regardless, there's something for everyone. So please enjoy the rest of our conversation with Jason Downey. Welcome to Yoga for First Responders On Air, where we break down yoga, neuroscience, resilience, and public safety in a manner that's authentic, educational, and most importantly, entertaining and lighthearted. I'm YFFR's founder, Olivia Mead.
As a yoga instructor and neuroscience enthusiast, I'm passionate about supporting first responders and anyone looking to improve their overall human performance. Each week, we'll dive into a new topic and often bring on expert guests to share their insights and experiences. But we'll also keep it real and share our own stories and struggles along the way. So, whether you're a first responder or seeking to master the science of mental and physical resilience, this podcast is your ultimate guide to triumph over life's challenges with unbreakable strength and unwavering fortitude. By pressing play, your training has begun.
I'm impressed by, like, you say that, like, the first one felt like you're a failure, and then you stepped up and like had the thing that keeps coming up for me is like you really have this natural awareness, this ability to like look at the situation and reflect on it. Like look in the mirror and like, am I holding myself accountable in this situation, or what can I do through this situation? And sometimes it might, with the administrative betrayal, it might have been quite a while later, but you have that awareness to like take this self-assessment. And so we actually talked about this in personal areas of excellence in that class about like inspect, customize, and maintain, right? Like, and so you're inspecting, like, where do you think that came from? Like, where did you learn that? Because that's not common. Like, because it's a lot easier to, like we were talking earlier, to point and bitch and to complain about the other guy or the other person than it is to be like, oh wait, no, this is on me. Like I can do better. Like, so where do you feel like that came from? Like, that's a hard question, but I'm curious.
I think, my wife might kill me for this, but every once in a while she actually calls me on my bullshit. So, I mean, that's the thing, right? Sometimes she's like, I
Mm-hmm.
used to, what happened was that sometimes I would go home and like, this sergeant, blah, 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 and I'd blow him up. And she's like, you're wrong. He was right. He was holding you accountable and you're mad. So sometimes it was
Wow.
like, that emotional thing. You're like, do you have my back or why are you siding with the sergeant? But then I was able to self-reflect and kind of do it. But I don't know where it comes from. I think I've always been kind of, I don't know, sympathetic or trying to understand or trying to relate to people, or always, feeling where they might be coming from. And maybe that's why I'm really drawn to this part of my job now, and finding that, like again, the why again, and the passion for all of this. Because it all connects, the mind, body, spirit, all of it, good leadership, and good leadership turns into a good product of mental health and wellness for your department. And, and a lot of it is doing like coping strategies and railing. I know we don't use coping strategies. We had to talk the other day. Whatever you want to do, we won't use coping strategies. I'm sorry that I said that. Actually smiling at me right now.
You can
So
say
yeah,
what you can say. Like I said, you can translate it however you want to. Like I'm curious to get into one of your the fancy word the clinicians used was
yeah.
adaptive strategies, and
All
so
right. So you
you can
want
call
you
you can
want to
call it
know
coping. You can call it a coping strategy,
you want to
but
know
you
you want
share.
to know one of mine. One of my, because I talk about, I bake.
Hell yeah, man! Like,
So
and also that was not gunfire. That was a bolt of lightning. If that came across
yes,
the speaker, like it was just a bang flash right outside the window. So,
yeah,
so your hypervigilance had them down. I'm impressed because
yeah.
it sounded real. Yeah. So, how did you get into baking? 'Cause I'll be honest, you're the second cop I know that has loved baking. Like, there's something to that.
Yes.
Lady Boss has
Can I
entered the
say
Lady Boss has entered the chat. So
I've entered the chat? Am I okay now with my?
you're good.
I'm hearing
Roll
an.
it.
I'm still hearing an echo though.
I think it's from him. Because I sometimes I can hear a little bit echo from me.
Okay. All right. So, one thing I wanted to say before we get into baking, okay, is a whole new area of our podcast, which I love. And like Eric said, you're not the first cop who went to baking. There's something to that, and I have a lot of ideas of what, but I want to hear it from you. But when I first entered the chat, I heard you say something about when your daughter was struggling, and you said that you were kind of, I didn't hear exactly the word, but he's a cop, he's a public safety, and he can't even keep his own house together. You said something to that effect, right?
Yep.
So I actually heard something that my own therapist told me, which was I was so frustrated. I was saying, I work so hard in life and I'm not a drug addict. Why am I struggling so hard? Like, why is this, And she said, these things that come up, mental health stuff, it's chemical imbalances, like you said, it has nothing to do with, um, I mean, sometimes, right, when we're dealing with, there is a traumatic event or whatever that happens, but these things of not feeling right and coping with anxiety, which I also have in the past, it's not because you or someone around you did something wrong, right? We're trying to, we blame ourselves, or we blame, or the people around us feel some self blame. But it doesn't matter how hard you work or what a good person you are or this or that. It has nothing to do with that. It's a separate thing. It's just like falling down the stairs and breaking your ankle. No one would say, oh, his kid broke his ankle, he can't even keep his own house together. Like, no one would say that, right? It has nothing to do with how good of a parent you are, how good of a person you are, or at any specific event. Typically, it's that life is extremely challenging, and I would say probably even more so nowadays for younger folks with, everything they have access to, that we need tools, and we're putting them out in the world with no tools. I mean, that's like throwing someone in the water, without in the ocean, and they have no idea how to swim. And then we're saying, "Oh, how come they're drowning? Is something wrong with them?" So I just want to touch on that, because it was literally something that was brought up to me recently. Is it's like I was self-blaming, or blaming God, or blaming whatever, for struggling. And we haven't said this publicly yet, but I'm an open book. But about 3 weeks ago, we suffered a miscarriage, and I was having a really hard time moving through it. And I have all the tools, and I have, and so that's why I was like bitching to my therapist. I was like, what the hell? Why do I feel this way? And it's not, we take it personally, and it's not personal. So anyway, I just wanted to, that caught my attention as I was running around trying to find my AirPods, and I wanted to make sure we mentioned it. But on to the 3-layer
Yeah.
cake. Go, continue.
I mean,
And
you said it.
we did talk about our miscarriage, because that
Oh,
was
okay.
Jason's journey as well. And so thank you also for being open with that, because I told him with a sense of gratitude. It's something that people don't talk about often. So it's okay to open that up. So with that,
I'm sorry for your loss.
now,
I feel been there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
with
So,
that,
but at the same time too, like, to add to your point, I realized that my daughter is a beautiful person, and and that is what you need to celebrate. And whether or not it's a chemical imbalance or not, I should never be ashamed in trying to show her that support. And again, that's the struggle, in the sense of I felt like I wasn't at that moment, and that's what pisses me off, or did at that point. So trying to deal with that, and and emotionally dealing with that. So that's a key piece. And of course, now she is doing fantastic. She does what she needs to do, and she has her strategies. And obviously it is a safe space. Sometimes in college, she's like, hey, I'm having a tough time, and she'll call me or my wife. And so I think we've established that safe space for her. But I don't know if I reacted, or left her out to dry, and say, I'm never going to bring you to the hospital, because I don't want people to think that I'm a bad parent, that I don't know if she'd feel that safe. So, but she is
Mm-hmm.
working with special needs children. She wants to be a special ed teacher. I mean, she's phenomenal. Like, when I tell you, she is, you hear like I'm the dog whisperer or something like that. Any special needs child, she can go into a room and get them to do unbelievable things. She established a young athletes program for, I don't know, special needs students and everything else. And she's just a phenomenal person. And So for her, not to be celebrated or not even to be valued because of, whatever a stigma is. And me as a person, I need to break that stigma for my agency. I'm not ashamed. And she's like, no, I see a therapist. I do this, and I 100% support her. And I'm not like, other people back in the day were like, hey, don't say anything about you see a therapist. Like, come on, that's on the down low. And,
Yeah.
I'm glad that she's happy to say that and not ashamed to say it because you know what?
Mm-hmm.
She shouldn't be because she needs it because there's something that she's struggling with and it's okay. And and sometimes mom and dad can't help her process that, or she doesn't want to share something and she needs somebody else. And I'm glad that she has that other person that she can trust to do that. So
much.
Dare I say, I'm starting to be at the point where if someone doesn't have a therapist, I don't really want to be in any sort of personal relationship with them because what's your anchor? What's stabilizing you? I have a girlfriend whose husband is literally quote unquote not into therapy. And to me, I'm like, that's a lot of red flags for multiple reasons. Like when I know someone has a team around them, it's like the race cars, right? That has have the whole team around them, or any athlete that has their whole team, right? I need a team around me to keep me in my lane, to keep me grounded, because I have people I'm serving. I have to be my best self for my work. How dare I not keep myself in this solid place? I don't think I'd be married to Eric if, we started counseling when we first started dating. We both came out of failed marriages and we're like, why don't we proactively front load this with some really good tools and communication? So I feel like as soon as you're born, you should get, secure the domain of your website for your name, and you should get a therapist. Those are the two things you should. In fact, what we did for our daughter when she was born is we got her an email address. We should have also secured her a future therapist, like retain someone's
Yeah,
services.
totally.
So not only is it now it's a stigma if you don't have a therapist. You're a live wire. You're too wild for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So your therapy became
baking
baking.
at times, yes.
That's
So
cool. So I want, because like I'll be honest, I watch the baking TV shows like where they like Halloween Wars on Food Network, where they make
let's not
fucking
get
crazy.
crazy. I'm very simple. I
I mean
usually
that's
make a chocolate chip cookie that the kids love. I make a pistachio cranberry cookie. I can do a New York
ooh,
cheesecake with white chocolate swirl in there. But usually my big thing for Mother's Day, and my wife usually loves it, it is a raspberry white chocolate chip scone.
holy hell, man! Like you say, don't get crazy, and like that all sounds fantastic. Like you can come hang out at our house anytime.
This is
So
like Great British Bake Off or whatever it's called,
Well, see
Great
what
British
so what happens
Baking
is
Show.
if I go to instructor school, right, and you're able to bring me along, we'll just bring we'll get an Airbnb or wherever, and I'll just bake while we're doing instructor school.
Okay,
yes,
first of all, you're hired for several reasons. That was one of them. But like, if you want to be on our Squalier team, you're in, hired, done. Yeah,
yeah,
that would be amazing because we need a baker, and we always have the house cook.
Yeah.
Um, so what is
yeah, and usually like yeah, the firefighters are the ones that we always get made of for being the cooks. And
yeah,
so
you're the
you kind
cooks,
of
the cops are the bakers.
I'll bring that's fair. That's fair. Different things. I'll accept that. And so how did you like you just so take me on that journey because we've this has been a podcast of journeys and so
Yeah.
you're like
So I think it
this
was, it's funny. I think it happened by, I don't know. I think at one point it was like a challenge. Someone challenged me to do something, and I'm like, all right, I'll do it. Or my wife wanted it. So at one point I started to bake, and then it turned into, I would use the box cakes, but I make my own homemade buttercream frosting. So
sure
for it. So ultimately, what it became is I did one thing, I tried it, and then all of a sudden people loved it. And I think part of it.
worked.
So there's a couple of things, right? So if you really get into like the clinical piece of why I love to bake. Probably it's methodical, right? So it takes me to put like the measurements are precise, right? So I am methodical in the sense of I'm cleaning off like a cup is a cup. It's not like a cup and a little sprinkle. Like I got my spoon and the knife, and it's like a clean line, so it's everything's perfect. So so you have that piece, right? So I'm focusing on that, but I think ultimately what I truly love about baking is the responses and the positivity that you get from it, right? People are like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. And then they want more of it. So I think that just like kind of hits home. It's what it is. And then at one point, then I became the person. So I had to like bake every cake. So for the longest time, now they're like, Dad, you don't have to bake it anymore. Like, so, but like there was like almost like a 12-year run. I made 4 cakes a year. And so of course, my oldest is 21 now. I have a 19-year-old, and I have a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old. So they're 18 months apart, but one's born March 15th, March 17th, and then April 4th, and then the one's on September 29th. So like there's 3 back to back that I was making cakes, and at one point I made a rainbow layered cake for my daughter. So I literally had to like make a little thin one, like crust. My wife helped me dye that red and then bake that and then and I stacked it all up, and then I got, it was always the buttercream frosting that I have to do. And so every once in a while I'll make whoopie pies, but usually the cookies are the things. I make actually a pretty good peppermint bark if you're a peppermint bark fan. So
Love peppermint
yes.
bark. I expect a holiday package.
Okay, well, one of the guys that he left and went to Homeland Security, he lived in New Jersey. He actually asked me if I would ship him some of my peppermint bark because he used to love it so much. So it's all right.
Yeah.
So I'll have to
I have.
It's
I was going to say I have a couple things to say about this that I'm picking up. One
okay.
is when people love it, and you're nourishing people, right? You're giving people joy and love and happiness and nourishment. I mean, that is the number one way to nurture someone else is by feeding them. That's why the Italian mamas are always trying to, the Jewish mamas always trying to get everyone to eat, because that's love, right? And everyone who goes into public safety, I would say, I mean, that's a blanket statement, but generally, are empathetic people. They want to nurture and help and support. The salty cops come from just having to put on the armor every day and not knowing how to take it off, right? So I think you're getting this direct hit of being able to care for and nurture, which I have to believe is in your spirit somewhere. And two, you said something interesting that I want to like make a sound bite from for instructor school, because from instructor school how specific we are. Where is your pinky finger? Where is your breathing? I want to see those ribs expand just this much more. Not this, but this, And that is because that's mindfulness. That is present moment, right? That when you have that specificity, the 3 Ps of exactly what everything's doing, that is mindfulness. Baking, I would say, well, I don't want to exclude cooking out of this, but what you talk about with baking is it is a science and it has to be very, very specific. Because of the specificity, you're able to get into the flow, into the zone. So that is mindfulness, that is yoga. And I say this time and time again, yoga is the application of all these things. It doesn't matter what the vehicle is, right? So the vehicle could be baking, it could be cycling, it could be doing these, movements on a yoga mat, but you have to apply the intention, the action, and awareness. And that's what you're doing with baking. That is your yoga. And so I think, from what I've been told about you, which is all these phenomenal things, by the way, which is why you're here, but I think you
Listen, I've already
resonated.
blown his ego up once. Like,
Yeah.
Okay. I know I'm late to the party. But I think you resonated because you already knew. You already were practicing the yoga. So that's my hot take.
yeah, I fully agree. Like as soon as you said how specific you were with like you're scraping the flour off with the knife and stuff, I was like, well, this guy's putting himself in a mindful
Oh
staying
well,
in a flow state, just using the modality of
yeah,
baking.
and it goes to all the things. They're in the oven for 10. My cookies are in the oven for 10 minutes. I let them cool on a pan for 5, and then they go in a cooling rack. So there's like it's all timing. It's not it's not because like you said, too much flour it could get too dry. Not enough it won't rise properly. So there's a lot of different things that go into it. So
And it's so funny when it comes
Yeah, I
to,
mean,
sorry, when it comes to
I was gonna say I make candles
baking.
for this same situation. Is like we have started a candle company, and I make candles because it's like I have to have it measured out perfectly, the right temperature, the right mixture of fragrances and scents, and putting the wicks in. Like it actually is kind of mindless work, which allows it to actually be mindful because like you can just like you have to focus in on that uh, for certain things specifically that you can't really worry about your boss yelling at you
Well,
or whatever
you
happened yesterday or all down the line.
you're getting in the zone. It's the same exact brain functioning, that cyclical thing that happens in the brain when we do yoga. And speaking of the candle company, when we had our first miscarriage, that is actually what helped us process all of that and come out of it, was starting the candle company. We put our brains to use in this flow cycle. And, that's exactly what yoga does as well.
yeah, and I think too is like you guys talk about the flow cycle, and I think that's part of my journey and what I really want to do is make sure that the spouses are communicating because we all you might have heard a little bit, but I mean it's the miscommunication or we weren't communicating after our loss for a little bit, and it caused a lot of different things. But I didn't know one of the things that she experienced as she was going through it because she didn't want to communicate that until near the end, and then became obviously stronger by that. But it was, it's the communication, it's the being vulnerable, and I don't know whether or not she, like I said, I don't know if she was trying to protect me or not, but it just caused a wedge a little bit. So I want people to how to, my one of my main goals is trying to teach spouses, to what this job it's going to change you no matter what. We can't no matter how it's going to change us in some way. You see evil, you see out there, and it's going to change you. But how we react to it and how we cope with it, or and how we, if we are able to, strategize, we can be healthy. We change it. And I was talking to Eric, we change it from what a threat is to a challenge, right? If I look at my marriage as a challenge instead of a threat, like, oh, she's a threat, she's going to leave me because my job has done this to me. So no, this is a challenge. Like I love my wife, and I told Eric, my wife is my person, 100%. She's my person, but we were challenged, and it's and it is tough, and it's not easy raising 4 kids and trying to do this career and in her career and everything else, and we're going around and they're active in activities and sports teams and everything else, and it's trying to keep it all together. And ultimately too is I tell people is you got to find that time for date night. The date night is the key part, is because you guys need to connect. You need to stay connected. And I joke around with some of the guys. I'm like, when you guys connect, guess what happens? They feel closer to you. So intimacy happens. So you might want to connect.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, whatever. It's like sometimes like they laugh, but I'm joking a little bit, but at the same time,
That's how,
No, it's
we need to
true.
feel connected. So
right.
you guys need to feel connected. My wife needs to feel connected. If she doesn't feel connected, it's not that, and take time, because when we hang up this job and we leave it, and we might have a couple of friends, but at the same time, who's there? Who is there at the end of the day when you hang up your badge, your axes, your helmets, and everything else, and your stethoscopes for EMS? Like, who at the end of the day when you retire and you're there and trying to beat the system and live long in retirement, it's your wife, it's your children. If you don't foster and nourish and nurture those relationships, they're not going to be there when you really are going to be then all of a sudden alone. You thought you were alone at work.
And
Oh, it is when you
oh
retire.
yeah.
That's devastating.
And you cannot,
Yeah.
and this was the mistake that I made in my first marriage, was I thought that once we got married, that was it. Like we were going to stay married. So I didn't put in the effort, the consideration, all of that stuff that, I probably should have. And that's not the reason our marriage ended. But when I reflect back, I'm like, oh, I just assumed he wouldn't walk out the door, right? It doesn't matter that you got the government involved in your relationship and that you're married. That person could walk out the door at any point. And so it's important. And one thing that Eric and we got this advice when we were dating, and I think we still implement it, is we give 60% and expect 40%. And so we're always, our expectations always exceeded because the other person's giving 60, right? And our relationship is more than 100%, fulfilled. And like you said, with connection, that's how women's brains work. The connection, the talking, the looking in each other's eyes. And, when we had Aurelia, so Eric always, we say in the beginning of our podcast, like, we get real here. So Eric always will and would, and, from the beginning, face me in bed. He never turned his back to me in bed. I didn't hold the same promise. I'd be like, I got to get comfortable, and I would do whatever I wanted to do. But he made that commitment. Then when we had our daughter, he took the night shift. And so her bassinet was on his side of the bed, and he would face it, and he wouldn't be facing me anymore. And I knew why. And at first it was fine. We were in survival, newborn. And then all of a sudden, I just started to feel really disconnected, And, but luckily we have good communication that I probably didn't say it in the best way, but at least I said it. Past me would have just like held it in, held to grow, whatever. But, and communication, by the way, to bring it back to the brain science, that's in our prefrontal cortex. And so if your prefrontal cortex is losing its mojo and getting weaker with the job that you do, because that's exactly what happens, you're even thinking, not only knowing how, but even thinking about communicating is offline. You're not even choosing not to, you're not even thinking of that as an option. And so, yoga has been shown to strengthen the prefrontal cortex. So again, I'm bringing it back to the fact that there is a tool out there that's going to help train you for all of the things that we're talking about, because it all does come back to brain science, even these little subtle aspects we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell people, that's what in my talk, I tell people, like, people want to be desired. You want to be desired. So, every once in a while, flirt. Like, flirt with your wife. Who cares? Like, sometimes I drive my kids crazy. I mean, they're all teenagers, and I'm like, man, you look so hot right now, and I don't care. We're in the kitchen, and they look at me going, really, Dad? Stop. Like, but
that is awesome.
But at the same time, I'm modeling behavior because I want them to be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
If I'm not modeling it, if I only show affection behind closed doors, what does that show to my children, right?
Oh, totally.
It's all about modeling the behavior and me having those conversations. And I think, my other part of the talk is how to communicate to your children. It's like, if I keep it in and I grunt in and I don't greet anybody at the door, right? Because sometimes we go to work, we fake it till we make it at work, right? For our supervisors, we're pissed off. We don't say anything. We fake it till we make it to the public. So all of a sudden when we get home, why can't you fake it till you make it for a second? Go, hey, buddy, you know what? I want to play catch with you. Give me 20 minutes. Do that mindfulness. Do a yoga. Do some breathing. Not go upstairs and sit on and watch reels and sit on the toilet. That's what I say. We don't do that. Like 20 minutes is of mindfulness, and then go down and say, hey, listen, I'm ready. Dad's ready. Or hey, if you have that relationship with your wife, hey, listen, bad day at work. I really don't want to see the kids right now. I need to kind of cope, let them know, or kind of navigate that for them, to help out. And then so you can re-engage. And it's about the engagement. It's not about, the quality, it's not about the quantity. It's about the quality of your time with your children, because you could be present at a vacation, but you're not present. Like, you're not there. Like, we can be mindfulness, and I tell them, people, like, what, be present in those moments and try to figure that out. Because if not, like I said, I speak from experience. My son's 21. He graduates next year. And then I don't know. I mean, he could meet somebody and go off or get a job across country. And I might not see him a couple of times a year. I don't know, but be mindful and be in those moments. Enjoy those moments that you have when you have them, because you just never know, and kind of relish those. And like I said, and nurture and just feed those and grow those relationships. It's all about the growth, because if I grunt and I'm yelling and screaming all the time, which, and again, I was guilty of it at the beginning, and then I'm like, wow, why am I taking it out on my kids that I'm mad at my boss, right? That's not fair to
Yeah.
them. But at the same time, what do we do? Sometimes we lash out at our loved ones, but I want to be better. I don't want my kids. So I need to do better at modeling a behavior that is a communication, calm skill that I can communicate with my kids. And that's what I've been, and my wife has really done a great job at keeping me in check, in the sense of like, hey, listen, you're up here. I need you down here. So, take a moment. So she's great. And like sometimes like she's been having a tough day and I step in. So, because we're there, and she can whisper better to a couple of them and I can whisper better to a couple of them. It's just how it works when, we have multiple kids. So it is a team effort, and to do it without her would be extremely hard. And, or if we're always fighting against each other. So,
Yeah.
I love your percentages, and we try to do that, and it's just try to communicate the best way we can, so.
Yeah. No,
Um,
you're
I
an
ha-
inspiration, man. Like that's such good valuable
yeah, seriously,
insight.
I had a breakthrough in the last couple days, which you just touched upon, and that's presence, right? And I feel like that it should be obvious, right? That's what we're teaching with mindfulness and stuff, is to be present. Okay. So I had this realization that I am in this hustle culture, right? We're in this hustle culture, work hard, we're following a bunch of entrepreneurs and this or that. My mind has been in the future, you know, and I look at old baby pictures of Aurelia. She's only 18 months old, but I look at just like a year ago and I can't believe how much she's grown. Look at that squishy baby. I wish I could go back to it. And I had this breakthrough that, wait a second, I think I'm actually allowed to love my life right now instead of always striving, for the future. And so today we went on this really long walk and I just looked at her little hands and her little feet and I soaked it in, and I, I just was like, yeah, I can love this moment even as I strive for things or whatever. But I almost felt like I didn't allow myself to ever be present because I need to keep chasing the next thing, continue to grow and evolve at the expense of this moment. So you're absolutely right. When you plan this trip or a vacation with your family, but you can't even drink it in and soak everything in. So like Eric said before, that's an amazing awareness, which is the first step, is to be aware, because you can't make any strategic changes without the awareness first. Um, so
It's
that's
hard.
great. Yeah. It's very hard, but it's practice, right? It's training, it's practice, it's a skill that can get better. Um, and I have a question that may have already been covered, and if it was, then we can just stop and edit this out. um, when it comes to yoga and the training you received at instructor school, what is your vision of how you want to use it and how you want to share it with other people? Like, what does that look like for you?
I think we somewhat talked about a little bit, but my vision is, so I was telling Eric, I posted it to the instructor or I actually tagged you guys on Instagram at one point, but I got my chief, like I got my chief and my three captains in for one of the I had to do one of the classes for the 5 classes that I needed to do, And I just sent an email. I put it in their calendar. I didn't even give them an option. I'm just like,
Nice.
see you here. That's it. And
Yeah.
at one point, my chief's like, did I even have an option? I go, no, you didn't. But I'm like, I looked him straight in the face and I said, this starts from the top down. I want to show you what this brings to the table and what this experience is like. So you can say, I know, or I support this when other people are like, hey, what is he doing? You know exactly what I'm doing because I'm doing it with you first. So I
Right.
wanted them to experience it. So, and he is all on board and he's allowed me to try to do this class for every officer. And he's already approved overtime for the officers to hang a shift. So we have like a half an hour overlap. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do a 45-minute class or so, and then they're going to be able to go in, shower, and have their roll call, but the patrol is going to stay an extra hour. My first class is next Tuesday with the second shift guys. So,
This
you know,
is
so
great timing. Yeah, that we're talking now.
So it's next, so we're doing with the second shift guys, and so there was 5 people, so we got 5 people in the sergeant, so we're gonna be rocking it, rocking it out and kind of doing that. I did a quick presentation, to them, so I can kind of cover some of the stuff, and I'm gonna do it to every squad and then do the class, opposed to try and do the whole class to talk about the tactical breathing. I kind of cover the tactical breathing and the roll call, and then kind of how it's not traditional. It's not, it's not the Lululemon girl and it's not the soccer moms in the minivans that are just, kind of doing the mom hours. That's not what we are. I am the fat guy that's on flexible that has the dad bod going and a cookie shelf that I, put my cookies and my milk on, and I'm going to bend over and, and I'm probably going to grunt and lose my breath, but I'm going to work on my breathing and we're going to have fun doing it. And that's it. So it's kind of funny because I sent out an email and I'll share this, and one of the senior guys on the shift, and this kid's brand new. He just got out of the academy. He's probably been here maybe a full year. And I said, hey, I didn't get your email. You didn't respond to my email. He's like, what email? And then the senior officer goes, hey, you're going to be at this class. This is all about wellness. I don't want to hear it. You better respond to him. Next thing you know, I get this email. I'm so sorry, Officer Downey. I can't wait to be in the class. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for doing this. So, we're kind of joking about
Amazing.
it, but, it's there that, I think we're getting the buy-in, and I'm really excited to see, everybody kind of do it, because I was telling him, Eric, when we're up at Camp Resilience, we've had, we do a yoga class, and usually it's like halfway through. That's where it kind of fits in, and everyone's like, we should be doing this every day. Can we do this every day type thing? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to do it in the morning. Like, can we do it before? And we're like, oh, well, it's a really tight schedule. So, last camp, I said, yeah, I'll do it. I met everybody out. We were on the dock on Winnipesaukee on a dock as the sun's setting at 6:30 in the morning. And
Wow.
we were doing yoga. Only a couple of people wanted to get up that early, but all of a sudden, like, man, I
Yeah.
should have came to that class, but we had a couple of people and like, man, I loved it. It was in, at the end, they're talking about what you like, and they're like, love the yoga. The yoga, I think I want to bring it to, bring it back. It's something that I used to do, but this is phenomenal. And I had one person say to me, and I thought it was really great. They had been to Camp Resilience a couple of times, and they're like, we've done the yoga class with the traditional. Your class was a little bit different, and it kind of resonated a little bit more with me, and I loved it. And I wish we did it more. So that just goes to show you, what a great product you guys have. And I'm not saying a product, but like, what the
Yeah. Yeah.
system and everything that you guys have done is phenomenal. And I was telling Eric that congratulations on, you guys being published and everything, and, all your study. That's fantastic. And it makes it easier for me on my end to go to administration going, hey, this works. I don't even need to say anything anymore. I don't have to try to prove it. It's already proven.
Right.
So
That's
kudos to you guys and what you guys keep on doing. So
Thanks. And that's exactly, it's funny you said that, because that's exactly what I said to the cadets today when I taught. I was like, you don't have to believe me. And I'm not even trying to convince you anymore. I don't have to. Like, here's the data and researchers speaking for itself, So, I mean, so that's fantastic. I love hearing all of that. And so imagining that this is part of a bigger health and wellness initiative at your agency. Is that correct?
Correct. 100%.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
All right. So yeah, I was telling Eric a little bit, and he got a little excited. So my goal is to have everybody experience at least one yoga class, then to figure out who's really interested and wants to do more. I want to take one group, give them a pro qual test, and then several months after, give them another one to see if their scores change, and then have more information for our administration. Go and see. Look at even in a short time, 2 or 3 month period, if we're doing it like once or twice a week. My goal would be like at least twice a week to do it, before shift, and see what we get with that. But my whole thing is to really try to incorporate it even into, for example, I was telling Eric that when I was teaching the SISM to the kids that just left for the academy, I kind of do a mental health and wellness before they go. And I was talking about challenge and threat, like the upside of stress and how you guys teach. Was this a challenge or a threat? And I said, what is the command for us to shoot down at the target? And the command is threat. So I said to him, I said, all right, what about if I said to you, challenge? Do you think that changes your whole system, right? And it probably would. Like all of a sudden, I hear threat. What am I thinking? My heart rate goes up a little bit. My vision gets, it's like, instead of a challenge. And I don't try to. I'm not trying to diminish. And I think sometimes in the law enforcement, like, oh, you're just trying to make us look like a bunch of wimps. Like, a threat's a threat. No, like, I'm not minimizing. I don't want anyone to ever get hurt or not be sick. But if I look at it, this person has a gun. This is a challenge for me to try to make, I have to do this, opposed to like, this is a threat, I'm going to die, right? So all of a sudden, what do we do? Like, it's the fight or flight, obviously everything. But if we can change our mindset, all right, this is a challenge. I'm going to get through this because I can, as you guys say in the cognitive declarations, I trust my training. Trust that you've trust your training and everything that you've learned, that people have my back, that we are going to get out of this. So I think if we start to build that culture here, and even in law enforcement in general, if we kind of change like threat, there's different ways to think of it. I talk about people trying to be cynical, right? Instead of being cynical, believe me, the cynical mind has saved me from getting hurt, or saved many of our officers. Sure. But instead of being cynical, right? Because sometimes we have this negative connotation with it. How about be curious, right? You be curious. At the same time, you're still getting the answers to the cynical questions by being curious. But you've changed your mindset and your attitude and probably the way that person feels that they're being treated. And you kind of change the whole dynamic on all fronts, not just one front.
That's how powerful language is.
Yeah.
Language and wording is so powerful, which is why the practice of CDs and that cognitive behavioral technique works, by changing that belief. And also, dare I say too, with the threat and challenge and, the job that you guys have, it is your job, because your job is to be in those situations more than you're built for and the average human is built for. And it's your job to be able to function in a different manner than I would, the average person, if randomly gets a gun drawn on them, they're an animal that's going to say threat, 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 and they're going to start throwing punches and freaking out, as they should. But if it's your job to de-escalate and, maintain and secure a situation, you do not have the luxury of going into a scared animal backed up to a wall. You don't. You have got to train your brain to function differently. So that's kind of what my response would be, is the threat response is, I think of an animal in a cage. And the challenge response is a well-trained canine dog or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that's the difference. It's this training to be more effective at the job that you signed up to do. Um, so I think, I mean, you've clearly got all the answers that takes away anyone's excuse, which is awesome. And why do you think too? I mean, because this was also true about Manchester, where, and I'm sorry that my puppy is attacking me. I don't know what else to do. I
Okay.
keep throwing him and he
we
keeps
were just
coming
we were just
back.
we were just talking
It's
about
fine.
clearly not a well trained canine in our house. Like
Yeah, speaking of well-trained
is
canines,
a
this kid, he's a drug dog right here.
I'll tell you my
Oh, look at that babe. Oh, when I had Justin on the podcast, all I did was want to talk to his dog. I was like, let me ask the dog a few questions, please. Um, um, but oh, I was going to say something. Oh, yes. Okay. So Manchester PD clearly has this really great wellness program that's well supported. Sounds like you are too, with the amount of support and ability you have to offer these classes. What's going on in that part of the country that's making you guys like kill it with your wellness program?
I I don't know. I think we're really, obviously, um, Justin talked about, his, the thing how they've had some critical incidences, and then they buffed up their, obviously their program, and then they started offering trainings. But now we've come to become a regional team, so we work very closely with each other all the time. And
Got it.
I think we realize that, we're trying to help each other out. So, obviously we don't debrief our own, so we kind of need more help. So, if I have a critical incident that, that involves officers, what I'll do is I call Justin up and our national and people from our regional team, all the towns that I incorporate will send sometimes, like, he'll put it out an email to everybody like, hey, we need a debrief team for Hudson, in regards to this incident, who's available. And next thing you know, I'm like, hey, my people are here this day, and I get the building. And next thing you know, they have a team. I meet and greet them and give them a heads up of what happened. I walk away, and I know they're in well treated hands because we foster this relationship that we all work together, and at the same time, we want to make sure that everyone never feels that they're alone. So that's the ultimate,
Yeah.
that there is
And
someone that is there for you to help you, to
yeah.
answer a phone, whatever you need. Um, we want to make sure that there's no excuse that someone says I didn't know who to call, because we go around, I think, with the phones, billboards, and everything else. Like, call us, please. We're here for you. So
So you're
yeah.
so you're I guess because I'm seeing you guys really putting it out there. You guys yourselves, and I've noticed this with Justin too. You're walking the walk. Um, you're living the life. You're being vulnerable. You're continuously putting it out there. Because I'm wondering, like we've worked with so many agencies around the country, and it can be a stark difference of the culture of wellness and resilience in one, you know, department versus another. And it has nothing to do with size of it. That could be an excuse, but that, Chicago Police Department, every single one of their 20,000 sworn officers has had YFFR training, and they have had 60 people go through instructor school. So it doesn't matter what size, right? What would you say if someone called you up and said, dude, I want to get your kind of culture into my agency? Like, what would you say? Hey, you got to start with this piece, or what would you tell them?
to be honest, I think it all starts with, I think, the passion. Like, if you show like you truly believe in it, I think it's really, you have to be that person. I think, you see just in the passion for it, and hopefully you can see that I'm very passionate about what I'm doing or how I'm
Mhm.
speaking
For
about
sure.
it. That I think the buy-in starts in, you truly need to believe it, not like, hey, this is a program, this is great, like, because everyone else is doing it across the country, so we need to start doing it. You know what I mean? And if you have no one that really has any buy-in and no self-reflection or is ready to be vulnerable, I don't know if it's going to work. So I think you have to
Yeah,
be the one person to kind of go out there and say, listen, I'm willing to be vulnerable, and, and I don't really care what anyone says. And, and I look at it as, you know, I've had some struggles that I probably could have maybe avoided or handled better, but I didn't. But I don't want anyone to experience those how I did. So learn from my mistakes. And if it's okay, if I have to share a story that, maybe makes me look, a little bit vulnerable, I'm okay with it, because at the end of the day, if it helps somebody else, or it's a parallel, or someone's like, wow, that was impactful to me and it meant a lot to me, wow, that's, maybe I will try to reconnect with my wife because we have been disconnected. How did it work with you? If someone's able to say that, and they, one person, if you have like somebody at a summit and there's three people that reach out to you and you're able to connect with three people, that's three people that I didn't connect with before the summit. So I think it's a win. And if you're able to help them, and you just build off of it, right? And then those three people help three more people, and and then it's and then it's six, and then it's 12. It just keeps on growing. And that's what it's all about. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We have over 178 CISM people trained now. People are really seeing it, and I think the younger generation's a little bit more, in tune to not stuff it down. I was born in '76, so it was
Yep.
a whole different ball game. We don't really talk about our feelings, and other people don't talk about, if you have any mental health issues, you're gonna keep that. No one knows about, or though that's Uncle Tom, but we don't talk about Uncle Tom because he only can come over every once in a while, type thing. And instead of embracing it, going, hey, listen, you know what? My Uncle Tom's a great person and he struggles with this, and but he's my Uncle Tom. I think that's what we really need to start doing. And I think
You know,
if you have that one person that's passionate about it, I think it can be successful, because sooner or later people are going to buy in, or realize, wow, it works. But if you have somebody
yeah.
that's just going through the motions, I don't think you'll be successful.
And from my perspective,
Right? Or no? I don't know if I
what do you
rambled.
say?
Did I answer your
No,
question?
yeah, you actually brought something up that is actually mirroring what I'm realizing was my experience. So, I started this about, I guess 11 years ago or so was my first time teaching in a fire department. And it was right at the beginning of these conversations happening. And I'll tell you what I noticed is when agencies started to do a wellness thing, they weren't assigning people who actually gave a shit, right? They're probably assigning someone who they're like, yeah, we actually really don't want you on the streets anymore, so we're going to put you in wellness or whatever, right? So you're absolutely right that they were failing miserably because they didn't actually care. They didn't have the passion that you're talking
Mhm.
about. The shift I'm now seeing is elite officers are being put in charge of wellness and resilience, and they have a passion for it, and clearly those things go hand in hand. It was never the top student, the top recruit in all the academy classes I've taught was always the one that excelled and got the yoga and worked really hard. I didn't know who they were going to name as their top recruit until graduation, and I'm like, oh, duh, of course it's that person. I saw it in the yoga classes as well. So now I talk to people like you and Justin and the folks we work with in Albuquerque Fire, that it's these elite personnel who are leading these, initiatives now. And that's what I'm seeing as success. It's you. And, if it weren't for folks like you to be able to experience it and translate it, I don't know where we'd be. Not even we, yoga for first responders. I thought we as a population and culture, um, we're heading in the right direction because of people like you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So
I
in the vein of continuing with vulnerability, and the fact that it is well past 11 p.m. for you, which
yeah.
God, thank you for
Oh my
staying awake with us
gosh.
late.
No,
I'm
Um,
so
one,
sorry.
no. So this is very funny. Funny story, right? So my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter, was asked. She went on a DC trip, so they asked her to speak to the school board, right? But before she could speak, someone else went up, and they were talking about a tennis program that they wanted to keep. And after it, one of the people came up and they're like, "Well, I think it helps with wellness. It's a really good thing." So as we left after my daughter spoke, she's sitting there. She's like, "Oh man, as soon as they sell wellness, Dad, I thought you were gonna get up there and talk about wellness because that's all you do." And like, I'm like sitting there, I'm like, really? Come on! Like she's now ribbing me because it's ingrained in our culture at home. It's like they talk about it, and
It's
good.
and to be honest with you, I was so excited, when, I was talking about, Maggie was helping me, and one of the other persons, Candace, she's a clinician that I work with, and we're doing a little bit of podcast too. It's a cop and a clinician, kind of talking about some of the stories that we're doing.
love.
So we're,
Yes.
we're in the process of doing that, but between those two, they're always pumping my tires, and I'm sitting there like, I don't know. They're like, no, do this. And I'm like, what do you think? Yeah, I'd love to be, you think the story could be good on the podcast? And Maggie's like, I'll do it. I'm like, well, I don't know the boss lady. So she's like, I got it. I'm going to reach out. And next thing you know, she said, yeah, they're going to reach out to you. I'm like, oh, perfect. So, it's fantastic. The, the people that were there at my instructor school were phenomenal, so, and again, I could talk for this for hours, and even when you said like 9:30, it didn't matter to me. Like you could have told me I need you to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, opportunity to talk
Oh,
to you. I do it in a
Amazing.
heartbeat because I think, I think people need to hear this and hear that, it's okay to be vulnerable. And, of course, I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and not many, I don't know how many, male police officers are Brene Brown fans, but,
Eric
you know,
loves Brene Brown too.
yeah.
So
So, but I'll tell you, like, I read the Dare to
She's
Lead book.
phenomenal.
Right. I read the Dare to Lead book, and I'm looking at it. And when I talk about my struggles with administration, it was so apparent. They were the opposite of what she was saying you need to do. Like, it was the complete opposite. And I'm like, this is 100% why they failed, in my eyes.
Right.
They probably felt like, oh, I did great. I retired. Everyone respected me. No, I think they feared you, or they knew the game. But I know it's late, but I don't mind staying on if you wanted to ask me about the mask thing. I know you wanted to ask me about that whole thing, and that
that's what he was about to go
he's
into.
going to help process with me as I do my finger quotes and everything else. But
Yeah, no, because obviously we weren't there as instructors at this instructor school, and it's something that's amazing with YFFR growing is the fact that Olivia and I can be working on other parts of the mission while excellent people are out doing these trainings.
right.
But there's something about being on site with folks like you and being in that process with people. Like that's at the end of the day, that is the work, that is the mission. And so Thursday, for those who the 99.999% of people who've never been to an instructor school, Thursday is what we call TAC skills day. So we do some firefighting 1 skills and law enforcement 1 skills, like very, very entry level skills, just to let people to dip their toe, to translate what they've learned the first 3 days into job specific skills.
How about that?
And by switching roles. So like,
oh yeah,
there he
wow.
is. It is mask.
So then
like
that's what I put
firefighters do cop skills. Yep, and cops do firefighter skills. So the class we're about to talk about is what we call training mask class, because we switched vendors on the masks. But firefighting face piece on, blacked out or colored out so you can't see anything through it, air restriction on. You get hot, you get sweaty. It's an intense class. And in the vein of being vulnerable, Maggie said, your squad leader said that you had a fantastic journey and transition in this class. And so if you want to end with this, what I have a feeling might be a powerful story, I think it's a really, really good capstone to this conversation.
Yeah, so what is it like?
Or maybe I set that up way too high.
No. It's funny. I say that about, like, when we're in like a debrief circle, I always joke. I'm like, I hate this circle, but I love this circle, right? Because you're vulnerable and this is where you heal. But at the same time, sometimes I hate being emotional, but that's what you need to do to heal sometimes. And it's okay to cry and again, sometimes, Maggie used to say, don't apologize, like, oh, I'm sorry, apologize for crying. Why are you apologizing? And and I got to do better. Like I shouldn't apologize for being emotional, because you know what, this is my journey, and it makes me emotional, and I'm okay with it. I should be okay with sharing that. So it's very funny. Before I get into it, was very funny that I was able to do the fire skills with the mask, no problem. Climbing the stairs, doing the hose and everything, not a problem breathing, right? It was blacked out by yourself in your own head, and you're sitting there, and I was doing okay. And again, you guys do a fantastic job, and you're saying, you can take it off. Don't take off the mask. Don't take off the mask, but you can you can adjust the regulator, adjust the regulator. You told us 5 different ways, right? Of course, I want to challenge myself. So I turn it to minimal air coming in. I'm doing pretty good. I'm like, all right, but I was nervous about it. And Maggie even said it. She did a great job. She's like, if you were nervous about this, you're probably going to struggle. If you're okay with it, you're not, you'll be fine. But so then I'm like, all right, no, I'm going to do this. I got this. So I was a little nervous going into it, a little claustrophobic, a little bit. So it was a little bit of struggle. So I'm sitting there, I'm doing it. All of a sudden, my breathing gets out of rhythm. No, of course, I don't even know why I'm getting emotional. It's funny, but you're sitting there in your head, and you're like, all right, I'm trying to get my breath, and I couldn't. So then again, this is why I hate this circle, but I love this circle. Um,
Yeah.
so I dropped down to my knees, and I'm like, all right, there's a part of me like, I just want to rip it off. I just want to rip it off. Now again, didn't adjust it to open it up more to breathe, right? I was trying to focus on breathing through my nose. Again, wasn't even, was trying to just do through the mouth. I could have started mouth breathing, but I was still trying to struggle with the nose. And because again, right, all of a sudden it was that tunnel vision. I wasn't breathing properly. I was out of sync. I was completely out. So I went down to my knees, and I'm like, I'm ready to rip this thing off. And then another instructor comes over, and you kind of talks you through it. And you're sitting there like, I don't know if I can do it. Like you're like sitting there like, no, I don't know if this breath is going to work. I don't know. Finally I was able to get it. And then I'm like, as I'm like, finally she talks me through it. I have you, you're safe. You're here. And I'm like, still like, I don't know. And I'm like, so I'm still not doing any of the motions. I'm just sitting there on my knees. It's like kind of, all right, this is it. And I didn't want to give up. And so finally I start to get up, and then I'm starting to get back into the rhythm, and I'm breathing, but now I'm breathing through my mouth instead of just my nose now. Then all of a sudden I'm starting to get some more clarity. Then I open up the regulator, so now it's full open. So I'm like, all right, now, wow, I can actually breathe now. So it's not too bad. And I'm sitting there, and it's just like the craziness of it. And then I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wow, this was a struggle for me. And then we finished it, and then we were able to take it off. But it was a sweat, and of course I shared my story. I'm ready to rip it off. Thank God that she helped me go through it. I don't know what I would have done. And then Maggie talks about that, I wasn't listening because I got the tunnel vision, and then finally I was able to listen. But it was like this kind of whole thing that when I get stressed, I shut people out. And it was like that moment in the sense of you don't want to believe it, but you have that aha moment. Okay, yes, because what happens is I don't want people. I guess sometimes you protect it, right? I don't want to let you into my baggage, or I don't want to let you into my trauma. But it's the opposite. You know what I mean? It's if you're not, they already know, right? Our spouses, our family, they already know that we're struggling or we're having a bad day, right? So why not let them in so they can help navigate it? Because if you don't, you shut them out, then sooner or later it's not gonna you're gonna tarnish that relationship and have some trust that it's your family. So it's kind of one of those things that it kind of after we're talking about it, it's so when I get stressed, I shut people out, and I'm just focusing on one thing, and opposed to letting the noises come in. And so it was tough for me for that piece, but it was a great experience. But it was tough. So
Yeah. And that's kind of the pinnacle class of instructor school, honestly, is that that's where that class in particular, because it really does shut out, like, it's just you. Like, at the end of the day, because like your breath is restricted, we've taken away visibility. You're wearing those big gloves, so we've taken away your proprioception. Like, it's not, it's designed on purpose to start knocking those senses offline, which then drives it more into the 6 inches between your ears. And that's, for a lot of public safety folks, that's a scary spot to be, quite frankly. And I've literally seen people, like, they go and like their eyes just get huge behind those masks, and you can see it happening. Like, they're ready to freak out, and then like they take that one conscious breath and they start to re-engage with it, and one step at a time you can see them coming out of that amygdala, that fear response, that hijack, and come back online and keep going. And so your journey with that class is exactly right. It's by design, it's validating, and you use the tools that you were given to work yourself through it. Like, that, to me, that's 100% mission success on that class.
Well, absolutely. And also, there was someone in our recent instructor school who also, was struggling. She ended up, taking her mask off. And again, like you said, we're giving her all the directions. I was the one sitting next to her, coaching her, but she couldn't hear me. She just took it off. And later she was like, "Oh, I failed. I didn't do it." And I was like, "No, you did do it. That's what the class is for. The class is for to expose to yourself, what is my reactive, what do I do when I'm activated? What is the reaction? You know? And so if someone gets through it with flying colors, what's what did they take with them? What did they learn? We're trying to get you, honestly, almost past that 4% to see what happens when that occurs. Because then, if it happens in life, whether it's at work or being activated at home, whatever, you can recognize it ahead of time. Just like you did. Okay, my breathing is now off. I'm good. And then you can start to put in the strategies to come back online. So your experience is exactly why we built it. And it's phenomenal that you had enough awareness in real time to even notice yourself coming offline further and further, and then to be able to come back. So that's an awesome story.
I give credit to firemen. I couldn't do it now. I know that they get to nap and sleep and everything else, but if I had to put that mask on all the time, I don't know if I could do it. So I mean, that was like a true brand new, I guess, founded respect for firemen, and that's best after having to put that on,
Yeah.
because I didn't know, for me being claustrophobic, other people, you guys can do it, but like it was difficult. So, and it definitely a challenge. So,
Yeah.
I think even people who aren't, self-identified as claustrophobic, like, it is not natural. It's just not a natural thing. And I have a student who brings this up a lot, and between Eric and me, we know multiple people who are veterans of the fire service, but they just, you don't put that mask on, depending on what kind of calls you get. I mean, you're not putting that mask on consistently unless you're purposely training that way. And so you might throw it on for the first time, not the first time, but you might throw it on, you've been doing this for 25 years, but you throw it on for the first time in a few weeks, and it'll take you by surprise, because what else is happening? Are you at a deficit already, emotionally, mentally, physically? Then that thing that you don't expect is going to set you over the edge. But if you have enough awareness to say, what's interesting now, like, since I've been practicing this work so long, when I do get activated, because I do, we all do, that's the thing. This is not to a healthy nervous system is not one that doesn't get activated. It's one that can be activated for when it's meant to. Things can piss you off in life. That's valid, and you're allowed to be activated, and then, but it's to be activated appropriately, and then, regulated again. And so it's when you can recognize yourself being activated. So yeah, so what I was saying was that I can watch myself now as I'm like, oh my gosh, look at my heart rate. I'm feeling the blood come to my head. I'm feeling like kind of I'm literally watching myself like a science experiment. Like, look at everything that's happening because I'm getting, activated. And then, this happened recently, like, you know, but when I was, before that miscarriage, I did have a little bit of bleeding that wasn't an issue, but it was enough to get me activated. And I felt myself get hot, really hot, and I saw all the things happen. I sat in my car, and as I waited for the doctor to call me back, I said, I'm going to do breath work until the doctor calls me back. And by that time the doctor called me back, I was talking to her like I'm talking to you right now. I was calm and I was grounded. So I was able to watch myself and then bring it back.
Good stuff.
Did we do it?
Alrighty,
Did we
man.
do that? Did we do the?
Yeah.
I think we
So
did it. I think we did the podcast.
we did the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly,
I'm
brother.
sorry,
I mean,
is it too long? I'm sorry that I like to talk too much. I mean,
no,
dude,
I mean, this is an amazing story. You have an amazing story and a great personality. I mean, honestly, it was a pleasure to get to know you. And like our training team did not lie when they said that this would be an amazing conversation. And so I really hope that folks have stuck it out with us to the end of the episode. And Jason, I'm so excited about your future with the department, bringing YFFR there. We're going to get
your
you
future
to an
with
instructor school.
YFFR. Like, yeah, we're not.
We're going to
you can't get away from
you're
us.
Gonna bake, you're going to be baking peppermint bark at every instructor school going forward. So even if you're not going to be a squad leader, we'll have you. We'll have you doing.
Yeah,
that.
we'll just bring in. We'll have a line item for.
It was funny because I was saying Maggie was trying to get me into. She wanted to try to get me to talk to you guys to go to Arizona, but I was telling Eric I have National Night Out that I kind of run, and my chief would kill me if I failed.
Yeah.
But I definitely would love to be mentored and at some point to do it, because I do truly believe in this, and this is definitely a part of the wellness. And it was very funny, like I had something that I had to go do, and before I did it, someone, one of my close friends, you probably should do yoga maybe before go to this event. And getting aside, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I will, and I did. I went upstairs and I told my wife, I'm like, hey, and she knew, like, I was getting a little anxious for this situation, and that's what I did. I ended up doing like 25 minutes just of personal yoga. Did a little bit, and kind of did some good stretches, and found where that stress was. And taking those deep breaths. I think another part of it, what I really took out of it is when you're doing the armor up and everything, all that stuff, but you're kind of there, and you take that deep breath, and you're like, hey, can you feel that muscle? When you're doing that stretch, and I can feel almost like that muscle itself is the breathing. You're like, all right, that's where it is. That is that is a cool part of, like, all right, I am definitely in tune with my body right now and my mind. We're all connected, so we're in a good spot. Kind of know that you're ready and moving to go. So, I appreciate you guys letting me share my story, because and hopefully other people can hear this, and I'd be more than happy to reach out or talk to anybody if they ever, need. So please don't ever hesitate to, send them my way. That you guys have my email address if anyone hears this podcast or something like that, because, we all have our journeys, and some of them are very similar. And, if I can help somebody, even just one person, it's a fantastic. So I appreciate you guys giving me this forum to tell my story, though. So.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thanks for offering that.
Is there speaking of which, is there a way to get a hold of you? Do you have any kind of social? Do you want them to reach out to us to get to you? Like,
no, I mean,
have that happen.
I have my email. I mean, and again, I don't. This is, people can start spam calling me. I don't care. But usually, anyone can reach out to my cell phone too. And my cell phone is 603-494-4715. So, and then my email is jdowny@hudsonnh.gov. So those are kind of
There you
my.
go.
So if anyone ever wants to reach out, or you felt the way I felt or something like that, and you just kind of figure out how I navigated it and kind of moved on, and and I always joke. I said I've been married 24 years to the same person, so I say that usually chuckles from people, but and again, it's not easy. Even though she's my person, it's not easy, and like you said, it is a challenge and it's a journey, but I wouldn't rather be any on a journey than with her and my kids that I have. So again, I appreciate you guys. You guys are so commendable for what you guys are bringing to everybody around here, and I don't think you guys get enough credit in what it's doing for people and how it's affected a lot of people in the law enforcement and first responder career. So kudos to you guys and keep on fighting the good fight as well.
Thanks, Jason. And you're walking the walk. Like you're the reason that we do keep fighting that good fight. It's because, of people like you. So keep doing that. And we got your back. We're in your corner.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high-stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about yoga for first responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app, online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.